Hi, Mo. Welcome. It's really cool to do this with you for so many reasons. But first of all, to introduce you to people that don't know you who watch this, although we have plenty of mutual friends and in the healing communities, we've been to similar spaces and beyond. So to introduce you, Mo Neiman is a certified somatic life coach and a breathwork facilitator who is trauma-informed. We also have a personal history. Before you were involved in these circles, Mo worked for my company, and you are one of my clients' favorite providers. And when you moved away from that job into whatever your next step was at the time, but it was definitely not that, your growth was our loss, and it was a pleasure to celebrate that loss with you, to move to where you needed to move. And I know you made a couple of stops before where you're now. You traveled, you moved, you did different things, which every single part of it, I don't know if I told you, I admire. It's never a bad time to acknowledge your power. And I found it to be insightful, not insightful. I found it to be valuable and different because, like that first workshop that you went to, I remember, and you came back knowing that this is not it. And your journey, I think it's been probably 5 years since, maybe more, probably around 4 or 5 years since that, maybe more. And it's been like, okay, this is not it, so I'm going to take a step. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm taking a step. And you kept taking that step. You kept and the first one was to leave that job, which I sadly, proudly, and with joy celebrated. So it's really nice to do this with you, given that you've walked, you've journeyed, you've walked your path, and you've come, I guess, back to my life and to circles that we know, stronger, clearer, with a message, with a gift. I guess I want to start with, in our conversation, is the beginning. Is maybe people know you for the last 5 years, but I don't know you from before. And you've shared with me very little snippets, like little pieces of your life. And I think there's a story. And then my first piece of curiosity is just to hear more of your story, or whichever part you want to share. So first of all, where are you from? Where were you born? Who are you? The rabbi in my community says, you were born and then what happened? He asked this from people. It's like, so you were born and then what happened?
I was born in Yerushalayim.
Oh, wasn't it England? I thought you're English.
No, I'm not English. No. My mom grew up in England.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get an English citizenship. It didn't work out. I was too old. She wasn't born there. She was born in the States. I grew up in a city called, at the time was Kiryat Sefer, and now it's, I think, known as Modin Elite. At the time was just Kiryat Sefer. Very tight-knit community. I like that people ask me how I grew up. I like to say Catholic yeshivish.
That's a first. Never heard that before.
Yeah. Rav Shach people, very Litvish, very strong about it. Very right-wing about it. My father is Baal Tshuva. My mom converted. Not only that, they got divorced when I was 5 years old. So probably in a school of 700 kids, I was the only one with divorced parents. Not only that, eventually when I was, I think, around 7, I moved to live with my father. That's what the Beis Din decided. So I grew up as a only child in a weird way. Like I had all the toys from my grandparents. They brought over to Israel. My siblings did not have that.
So which siblings? Your dad's other kids?
Yes.
And your parents, before they got divorced, had only you, or you had more siblings?
I had me, my brother, and my sister. She was a baby when they got divorced.
Uh-huh. And only you went to live with your father, or also the other two?
Only me, because I'm the oldest.
Uh-huh. Interesting. What happened to you was you the Beis Din decided. The Beis Din decide how you're like your destiny, sort of.
My upbringing is very different than my brother and sister.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up very different. I grew up speaking English. They lost their English. Living up north, they got abused by that, by the school system there, by the kids.
For speaking English?
Speaking English. Oh, you're American, you're this. I think I had a little more pride of being American. So someone told me, oh, you're American. I was like, yeah, I know. I'm better than you, in a way.
I got it. So that kept your English as part of your.
Yeah, it was not as well as it is now. Um, no one corrected me, so it's more they call it gibberish, English Hebrew mix. And been in the States for over 10 years now. I grew up in an abusive home. It wasn't a pleasant place. Um, like I was thinking about it before the podcast. You mentioned talking about it, so I noticed that looking back, because I don't live it in the past as I used to. I used to have it all the time, the stories in my head. And so looking back, it was a lot of points that it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe to be in my bedroom. It wasn't safe to sleep. So a lot of things added up to it. Waking up in the middle of the night and getting beaten up,
Mm-hmm.
um, which did not happen often, but it was enough for me not to sleep well anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was with your dad, and he remarried.
No, he did not remarry. He remarried the second time. I was 12 years old.
I got it. You have a relationship with your dad now?
No,
Wow.
no relationship with him. I think it's for me. I'm doing this. Not having a relationship with him. I know people are try to convince me it's your dad after all this. If you didn't live in there, you don't know. And also, we are born with a tendency to keep family close, no matter if it hurts. We're born with
Yeah.
that, and it's something that we need to learn. If we have someone unhealthy in our house, sometimes we have to let go of them.
Yeah, I spoke to someone today. There is this book that's called It Didn't Start With Me. It's a really, really good book. And there are two takeaways from that book that I took. One is about words. He talks about inherited trauma, which is the title. It didn't start with me. So he talks about inherited trauma, and he says one thing is to notice the words we use.
Mhm.
Like sometimes it's not my words, it's an uncle or grandparent or great grandparent's word, that the word that they used was because of the trauma they have been through, and because it became a word that's shagul, it's something people use, and now I use the word too, and I don't need to. I can change the way I speak, and then my psyche won't feel necessarily scared or traumatized. It's not my story, it's their story. The second thing that book taught me is, I think it connects well with what you're saying. It talks about being open to parents, and about energy, and about the flow of power and safety that we need, that it doesn't come from nothing. It comes from parents. So like dad would give, let's say, safety, and mom would give power. You're powerful, specifically for their boys. So safety and power comes from there. What he was saying is that closing off from parents means I'm closing off from that energy. That said, it doesn't mean I'm in touch with them. Sometimes putting down the boundary means getting the maternal and fatherly things that I need in my life, that power and safety, dafka by putting the boundary. And staying enmeshed in dysfunction actually cuts me off. So sometimes putting distance is my way of connecting to my parents,
I like that.
which is really interesting because it opens me up to what I really need from a and in your story currently, like where you're up to in your story. It's like really to understand the safety that you need from a father.
Yeah.
And then people have all these opinions, and it's so individual. Like everyone should find their own answer to these things. And it also changes as we feel safer and bigger, things change. But the point is to actually tap into what we need to get from, which we can't have from ourselves, which is safety, belonging, courage, encouragement. Anyway, I respect whatever you do, so no judgment.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you lived with him.
It was like almost like a bachelor house too, in a way.
Mm,
So I did not grow up with a mom, although I did have other family friends that used to go a lot, which the mom was more modern to me. At the time was amazing and it was helpful as a teenager too, especially as a teenager. But it's not a mom still. It's not the same thing. It's not about
yeah.
mom being there and
Were you
nurturing.
in touch with your mom those years that you went to your dad?
Barely. Like it was mostly phone calls, and I had a period of time where I did not see them or hear from them for a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, they always were fighting and always in based in courts, and it was just a regular routine thing.
Well,
The hate to each other was unimaginable. For my mom to be a convert, and it's in Israel, it's not a place for converts. So for her, it was very hard to gain support, and my father had an easier time with that.
from the system, from the Jewish system he was part of, and she had a harder time because she was a convert.
I'm pretty sure it's part of, yes, convert, a woman.
She was part of the same community as your dad? Like they belong to the same like sector or crowd or rabbis?
Same sector, but eventually she left. And yeah, those rabbis were not supportive of her at all. It was all his rabbis.
And that's basically what happened all those years, from when you're 5 till...
If I've taught me teen, probably.
Wow.
Legally, you can't do anything anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So my siblings, so they're a teen. They're younger than me. Yeah, went on for years. I think over there, I think a little beforehand, but also over there, I was very suicidal, and I became very suicidal those years. And it went on as a teenager, and just got worse and worse.
You had any kind of support? Anyone to talk to or support you or help you?
No.
So you had friends?
I had friends, but it's not things they talk about.
Ah.
It's very shameful to talk about those things.
Hmm. And you went to yeshiva and cheder, like you were in the system those years?
Yeah, I was in the system.
Like you went to school every day and had your tests and classes and so on?
Had classes, had tests, never written a test. I was the quiet one in class usually. Tried to sit in the back. Didn't know anything was going on. Going to dreamland in my head. Kind of surviving the whole time. And hoping not to get a slap in school too in cheder. Which was a normal thing. And also abuse was in the community was very normal. So it didn't seem like it was out of touch.
Mm.
Like you see someone in shul getting a slap from his father or someone else helping his father, basically, which is really weird. Yes.
So to you, that was just life. That's what life is.
Yeah, it was life. It was very normal. In some ways, yes, it was scary. It was very scary. I remember being a kid, it was very terrifying. I don't miss my childhood. I'm not, like, I know a lot of people miss their childhoods and want to go back to be kids. I'm like, I just wanted to get out of there. And I still don't miss it. And I don't think anyone should go through that. Father was a wrestler in high school. So he knew how to hit. And no bruises. Can't prove anything. That's always helpful.
I watched a documentary about how to become a successful dictator. So it's a documentary of history about, I think, 6 dictators, like Hitler, Stalin, a few others. But the way it's written is in a very humorous, sarcastic way, because it basically gives you a crash course of how to become a successful dictator. Very entertaining. Not too long, like 40-minute episodes, I think 6 of them. So it's like you can write a book, how to be a successful, abusive.
Yeah. Go learn martial arts.
This is how it's done. This is how you punch. This is how you hit.
Yeah.
In a way of telling your story. One of the things that always stands out with my connection with you is your humor. You have this light, funny touch to things that are generally heavy or taboo.
I bring into sessions too the sense of humor. It's very important. I always tell I did it in the groups too. I think more so heard that. I always say, hold on to your story in case this whole thing doesn't work out.
I mean, the whole healing thing.
Yeah, and this whole healing thing doesn't work out. Hold on to your story just in case. It's also a way of knowing that I can let go if I want to. I don't have to be too serious about it, because the healing work can seem extremely serious, and there's big parts of it that it is serious and very heavy. So we do need to bring in a sense of humor, because it's part of healing. Something that comes up to me a lot in sessions, and I'll talk about myself about that. I was molested when I was 15 in yeshiva by another kid that was older than me. It happened when I was sleeping. I woke up to it.
Mm-hmm.
What I've noticed is there's a lot of shame by being 15 and going through that, because I'm what's so-called an adult. I should know better. I see it with a lot of people, unfortunately. That happens, and they will not work on it because the shame is so big, because I'm so-called an adult. And it's not true. I'm still a kid, and it's going through hormones, going through whatever it is at 15, and those things happen.
So when you're saying the shame is for an adult later to not want to address it or talk about it, or share because they take responsibility that it's all their fault, and therefore it's shameful to talk about it.
Because 15, it's a big bit. You should know you're an adult already.
Yeah, you know what the thing is, that even if someone is 30 and screws up, and they're like, I can't talk about it because it's all my fault. The principle that what I know today I didn't know yesterday applies at any age.
Yeah.
You know, and of course when someone is, I think, under 28, when the brain isn't fully developed, so people take this kind of ownership. It's wonderful to take ownership, but not in the price of suppression, which creates aggression. So yeah, so you look back at that time and you really understand that you were a kid,
Yeah.
and you didn't know better.
Like, I suppressed it. I didn't even notice that was happening, like, later on. Even after, like, my first workshop was not about that at all. And I think the second one, too, wasn't about it. It was later on that it came up. Came up all the week. And that it clicked. That's what happened. I really thought there was something maybe wrong with me or whatever. And, like, I was suppressing it. And then just the whole thing just clicked. And I was like, oh, it actually was not okay. And I felt a huge pain in my stomach about that. It was painful.
Right. So like, you look back at your story today, you can understand that, okay, this wasn't okay, this wasn't okay, this wasn't okay. And as you look through, 5 years old, 6 year old, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9, 10, you can look at each of these things and be like, it hurts, it's painful, and it wasn't okay.
Right.
And then you sort of can look at it yourself as, like, how do you see yourself when you can pinpoint on the story and say, that's not okay. Now what happens to you? Because what people are really scared, that are not exposed to sharing and openness and therapy and healing, people are scared that it's going to trap them into victimhood. Like, they'll look at something that's not okay and they'll go like, what's the point of that? So what happens to you when you can look at a story or a part of your life and be like, that's not okay?
At the time, I called up for help. I was already after workshops. I called up. In that specific story, I called up Adam Mordechai. He was with Nachman in the car, and I'm very grateful for that talk that we had, and that it was pretty good, and it was very helpful. And then getting support from the groups, WhatsApp groups. That was helpful. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and having someone that was there that's up all night, to talk to.
When you look at it now, like what do you see when you see, okay, this was wrong? Like, what happens to you when you look at it now?
Well, it's more about connecting to the feeling that what I was supposed to feel then, the unsafetyness. It was very unsafe and could not express myself. And also, I grew up in a very manly world where men don't feel. And I did have a professional that tell me that when I was 19, that my brain and heart are disconnected. So I'll never feel anything. I like to prove him wrong today. But when it comes to that, but yeah, I felt actually at the time when he told me that, I felt very manly. I'm not supposed to feel. So at the time, that feeling did not have the space for that. I had to just shove it down. And if I feel the need to cry, run to a room or somewhere quiet and do it quietly and come out like nothing happened. And suck it up. Today, going back, I can give space to that, have an expression, and also talk to my inner child and be as an adult today and show them what I do today. The way I see what I do today is what made sense to me, is what I went through, is to have a better understanding of what people are going through. I see it in my work all the time. It's the people that I attract, they come to my work, to my sessions, and we have, like, in different ways. The story's not always the same, but it's very similar in many ways.
It's like, people are very wondering what does trauma-informed mean, and one of the ways to be trauma-informed is going through some stuff and coming out of the other side of it sane and strong and with medicine to give and share. That's pretty trauma-informed. So when someone shares something of their 15-year-old self, and you can look at your 15-year-old self and be like, this isn't you, this isn't okay, you're not the story, then you can look at someone else sharing that and be like, this is very painful, this is wrong, you're not the story. Like, that's pretty darn trauma informed. Yeah. So what happened next?
I dormed in yeshiva eventually. In the beginning, I was too scared of that, and eventually I did dorm. I remember having a conversation with the Rosh Yeshiva, and he was American. He actually told me that he grew up, his father never hit him, and I honestly thought he was lying.
Mm,
Like it's impossible. You can't be in the system without that. You're not from.
mm.
Yeah,
It's like
unfortunately.
that's what dads do. Dads beat their
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
Wow.
I honestly, to God, I did not believe him. Eventually, I dormed. I dormed in yeshiva in Ramat Shlomo, in Yerushalayim. The yeshiva does not exist today. It's shut down. But anyway, I was there for 3 years, and the third year is where the 15 started. But beforehand, when I was 14, I was home. I think it was around Sukkot time, and police came home to my house. Someone called the police. Um, that my father hit me with the sukkah board. And I went right away in denial. He never actually hit me with the sukkah board. At that time, nothing happened. If they came a few days earlier, it would be probably a different story. But at that time, so I'm like, also have a thing that has to be truthful, even though if it's painful, but it has to be 100% truthful. If not, the whole thing is a lie. So in that case, it wasn't true. And then the police tried to have a whole investigation with me without my father knowing. Apparently, it was illegal, and they couldn't get anything out of me. I was also grew up where cannot trust the police.
Hmm.
So the policeman is worse than me, and I hated the social workers that did that, and I mistrust social workers, therapy, and all those people.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah,
Look at you. Wow. So the system that was in place to actually protect you, you did not trust them at all.
yeah, I did not trust them at all.
Wow.
I was taught not to trust them. It's the Chiloni world, right? It's the outside world. It's
I know it's really confusing in the very ultra community, like trust. It's like specifically when people don't look the same. It's like, okay, people who look the same like me, I can trust because I know them and they know my family and so on. People who don't look like me, how do I know I can trust another person? What gives that person the credibility to, specifically if they're an authority?
also thinking back now. I didn't trust anyone there, even in the frum community, because
Wow.
they might tell someone about it. They might call the school system, and that's what they did there. So
Mm,
it's not safe anywhere. Oh, so 14. So I had a whole thing. So I blame my mom for that, and I stopped talking to her.
mm,
And I took like my father's side in that, in a way. And when I was about 16, I went to a different yeshiva in Rehovot. And he like took me as a project or whatever to help me out. So he kept pushing me to talk to my mom. So one of the things was to put a boundary. It's not talking about my father or her. I was
mm.
a messenger in between them. So tell your father I hate him. And my father would tell your mom I hate her. Like she's a problem. She did this and this. It was always back and forth since I can remember. Talking on the phone at a very young age. It happened for years. So I put that boundary at that time, and I was very strict about it because anytime it came up, I just hang up the phone and leave. And then eventually it stopped. But I was very strong about that boundary. And then I left that yeshiva a year later. They wanted me to sit down and learn. So I left. I went to a different yeshiva where in Yerushalayim, which I was there for many years. So the yeshiva was a lot lighter. So the rules was if you have a girlfriend, don't lie to us about it, kind of thing. Don't tell us you're going shopping when you're going to hang out. And I was like, what? It was it was interesting, but I had actually a very nice time there. I felt like a part of a system. Wasn't the only one going through a hard time.
Mm,
None of us went back. What do you call benazmanim? None of us went back home.
mm.
Stuck around. So I was there for like I don't know, 4 or 5 years probably.
Wow.
And they treated us well. Like they took us on trips. They took us to Switzerland, and it was really nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very special. But I always felt there's a place where I'm not being understood because the rabbis did not go through what I went through. But they're still part of the system in a way. They're more open minded, but they didn't go through the same pain, similar stories, or anything like that. So I always felt something is missing. I couldn't pinpoint that. I always felt not understood, especially when I had a rabbi that I was very close to, which I told him my story. He said he was angry. He says, "I'll talk to your father about this." But then he talked to my father, and then he told me, "I don't believe you." Basically, like you're
Wow.
or overreacting about it. I was like, okay, so trust the rabbis just went down.
Right. There's no system in place to handle stuff like this
Yeah,
within certain cultures. There's a system in place how to believe, how to grow, how to get support within the day to day. But when it comes to things that are super painful and not fixable specifically, there's no real solution for it. So there's no actual space to hold space for it. It's too much.
right.
So what they do is it's like negate. Then either you're making it up, or like it's a whole other pain. It's besides the pain. It's the pain of not validating the story
Yeah,
and what that does.
I had times where when I was around 14, 15, when I was home for the holidays, that my father always used to lock the door at night. And even though he knew I'm not home and will come in later, didn't care. He can bang on the door, do whatever you want. I slept on the streets when that happened. Like I fell asleep, like unfortunately, on the steps or on the bench. That was it. That came up a few times. Like after when I came to the States after my first jobs, working also for from people, and it was foreclosure, and it was kind of scammy, the whole system. And one day I hear that I don't have a job. I'm owed money. But the guy that I worked for, I couldn't afford living anywhere. Luckily for me, I met a new cousin. They didn't really know, but he likes to find jobs all the times and keep people busy around him with his ADHD. So it was helpful, and I slept by him for a little bit and found a place there eventually.
What led you to the States? Someone invited you? Someone offered you something?
I wasn't invited, but I was looking to leave Israel. I was miserable in Israel,
Uh huh.
and coming to the States was part of my escaping my
Hmm.
reality of life where I live.
And at first, I think if I recall, you didn't want to visit. You didn't want to go back to Israel. You didn't plan on going back.
When I first came to the States, I was in New Jersey. And then I had that part that I did not have a job. Then I went to Green Bay, Wisconsin. And over there, I became extremely depressed.
Hmm.
I'm very down, very miserable. I work for every phone person, and they're just putting me down, each person, the people that I meet. Then eventually from there, I went to my grandparents in Florida. And my grandfather was like, yeah, you probably shouldn't stay here. Go back to Israel.
These are your mom's parents or your dad's parents?
My dad's parents.
Uh huh. Okay.
I was always very close to my grandfather
Uh huh.
from my father's side. Um, like it's a different relationship between the grandparents, the grandchild, the first grandchild. It's very different. I was the only one speaking English for years
Mm.
from the other grandchildren.
So they suggested you go back to Israel because you have nothing here, like no work and no life, and
Yeah. A year late after that, my grandfather passed away.
mm.
So I flew into the funeral. After that, I was in my family in Toronto for a little bit, and then I came into Brooklyn, and that's how I got to know you. After that,
Mm. So you came back for the funeral, and then you decide. What was it like going back to Israel after Wisconsin, Florida? Like, what'd you do when you went back? You were already in your 20s, probably.
I was probably 24 or something, or 25. I worked in some job like a bakery and a factory. I was just like I didn't care what I'm doing. It was just to survive, to live,
Mm.
get my head down, um, and smoke weed basically. It took me actually to darker places, but every Friday I'll smoke probably.
And you lived by your dad again when you
No,
went back.
no, I lived with
Were,
friends
uh-huh.
that I used to stay by, and they actually wanted me to move out pretty quick.
Hmm.
Couldn't afford it for whatever reason, and I felt very again betrayed in a way
Hmm.
when it came to that. Even though they didn't mean it, and whatever it is, for me that's what it felt like. I just felt like I keep getting betrayed in different ways.
Wow.
Every new family that I meet also betrays me. So yeah, it felt very, very hard when it comes to that.
And then the funeral brought you back to the States, and what made you decide to go to Brooklyn? You had no one in Brooklyn, right? Your cousin is in Jersey.
I had actually friends in Brooklyn from Yeshiva. And they were in Crown Heights, so that's how I got to Crown Heights at the time. They're renting a place there, and so yeah, come here, whatever. We'll split the rent, figure things out when you get here. I'm appreciative for them being there, and I feel like today those things happen in the right place, the right time. And I bought an old junk car from a friend, started driving, and went into the car service business at the time. With that friend too, I also got to know you and start working for your company. I remember one day I drove your wife, and for whatever reason I felt the need to spill my beans, and afterwards I really regretted it, and I called you up about it before you fire me. that was the fear that was happening at the time, and you're like, yeah, my wife probably won't tell me anything about it anyway. But after that, I think a month later or something like that, you told me about the workshop, the journey to home at the time, and I did not know what a workshop is. So
I remember vividly knowing that once you go there, you're gonna quit. I remember knowing. I'm pretty sure you took my car to the workshop to Canada or somewhere. I remember Shabbos.
It was New York.
Watching you. Where? Upstate?
Yeah, I was upstate New York.
So I remember seeing the car, seeing the truck parked, seeing you at the retreat, knowing this is going to end. And the people that worked for me at the time in that business needed to be capable, but for some reason keep them settled. Today, I know that like people that I hire, it's like an opportunity. There's a give and take, but and I talk about it openly. But at the time, I was like, not necessarily discussed that you're going to be here for a while until you're done, or I wasn't that clear. And I remember watching you and seeing the car and being like, okay, you're not going to come back. Got it. So that introduced you to a whole other world. Like as soon as you entered that weekend, that space, what happened then?
I knew there was a better thing, a better life. I just never knew how to cross that. At the time, I remember still feeling that there was like a glass wall. You can see everything, you cannot touch.
Oh, wow.
And that just shattered. There was like a whole new breath. It was the first time that someone believes me too. That's the feeling that I had. Someone believes my story.
Wow. So much of the suffering, like later in your 20s, was about no one believes my story. No one is listening to my story. No
one cares. People call me, oh, it's very inspiring. What your story? Yeah, right. Yeah. Get out of here. Like I didn't believe anyone, and also those will be listening to it if they're going through this similar things. I remember on YouTube, they had those different videos come up. Tony Robbins talking about himself. At the time, I did not know who he was. Different people which are very successful today, but had a abusive parent, drugs, or whatever the case was. And I just like, yeah, they don't get it.
You would think that those people don't get it?
Yes.
Why?
Because I was not there. I was still living in my story. So I was
but why at the time in your story, why would you think that a person that went through that wouldn't get it?
Because I didn't really believe that you can get to that other side of actually being feeling joy, feeling happy. It was like, yeah, I really believed it was impossible. I got to a point before the workshop, I was in a rock bottom when it came to that. But I really believed I will never have joy in my life, never have happiness, and just need to survive and do whatever. And I didn't care what I was doing.
Right, just like thinking that if the Rosh Hashiva wasn't hit, it's just made up. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you ever think of what parent you would be?
So for years I was terrified of trying to be the same parent. That's the way I was raised. I think after like a long time working on myself, and I had a therapist I think told me that the fact that you are aware of what you went through, you also be aware of what kind of parent you're going to be, because that's always going to be in your head.
Right. So you were terrified because the only reality for you as parents, as far as parents go, it was abusive. So you knew you don't want to be abusive, but that's the only way. So it was pretty terrifying.
I was also pretty sure though, once I get married, I'll get divorced. Too. It was like it's happening, so why even start that?
Right.
But
Right. So it was this dreading survival living and pretty hopeless of actually being on the other side of that glass, like looking at people like Tony Robbins or people that went through stuff. But for you, that didn't seem like that's possible.
right,
And the retreat broke that glass, and then it's possible. And now I need to figure out how to make it possible.
right, and it was like I guess like a heroin hit in a way. I just wanted more,
Right.
and to break.
Which you've done for a while, and then you disappeared for like 2 years, I think. It wasn't smooth sailing from there on. Like it wasn't like, oh, now I can be that, and I'm believed, and now okay, great, and now here we are talking. It wasn't like that.
No, it was hell. Big part of it. There was a lot of paranoia that came in, a lot of dark places that happens, and those part I was stuck. And you sent me to someone at the time. I was stuck for I think like for 3 weeks at the same story every time, like when they were checking groups that we had, and they just changed the perspective about it. And after 2 meetings, and I was like, oh, cool. And like I was also very clear what's happening with me and where I am.
Right. You understood why you're feeling the way you feel.
Yeah.
Right.
What part I was stuck. The part I was actually stuck is how a person can hit a little kid, and it buggled me, and it really bothered me. And her perspective was, when it comes to trauma, when someone goes through trauma, they get like today I know more about it. The brain changes, and we actually get stuck in that age, and everything we do is through that trauma. So if it happens 6 years old, 7 years old, we're still 7 years old. So a parent that hits a kid, they're still a little kid doing that. And that changed my perspective about it and helped me to move forward.
Wow. Which means that the parent doesn't realize what they're actually doing. Just like a child hits another child, that it doesn't have that significance. It's not called abusive when one kid hits the other. So a parent that beats their kid is actually in that very moment a child.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a huge forgiveness piece. The ability to look at abuse that way.
Yeah. So I didn't forgive when it came to that. It just made me enough sense for me to move forward. Later on, I learned about radical forgiveness, which I love that book. It's one of my Bibles. It's actually about not forgiving the other person. It's actually forgiving myself or blaming myself that it's probably okay that I'm getting hit. Right? There's always a part of ourselves that we blame ourselves for that. And so probably we deserve that. It wasn't the first time. The first time never makes sense. But after when it becomes a repeat, there's maybe something wrong with me. And that blame and forgiving that part of me, of myself, or blaming myself and different parts in life. That's one of the best ways of moving forward. It's actually forgiving myself.
Wow. Good. And then what happened? So you're going to these retreats, the glass shatters, it's tough, it's difficult, you're learning, you're pushing yourself. I think that things change. Tell me where I'm wrong, but I think that things really, really changed for you in the last 2 years, like 2 or 3 years. Like your reality is very different than 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. So it started when I went to Florida trying to figure out what I want to do in life, and eventually figuring that I wanted to go into coaching.
Yeah, and then there was also a sequence of other jobs, right? You worked in this industry and in moving and all these other things that you sort of followed as you're expressing and opening and expressing yourself and opening.
Right.
And
also came from a place where I did not feel that I'm good enough in that. So I studied coaching, but who am I, right, to do that?
They call it imposter syndrome.
Process, exactly. So I had that going through for a long time, for a good few years.
You know what? My number. First of all, I still struggle with imposter syndrome. Sometimes it's imposter syndrome. Sometimes it's the clarity that I could be better and I will be better. So what does it make of me now? And it's just high expectations. And sometimes it's actual imposter syndrome. It's like I preach, but I don't do, or I don't live up to my own standards. So, but that said, I'm in a good place. Like I value what I do and the work that comes through my work. But you know how many years it took me? from my training, my first training, which was the first of many, until I actually had an office and committed to my clients, not in and out, up and down, a little here, a little there. I don't know if I told you this. It was close 8 years.
Hmm.
8 years of dancing. And for most of those 8 years, I wouldn't tell anyone that I'm a life coach if they didn't know, if they knew me from my business. And
Mm.
if anyone knew my coaching work and healing type personality, a vibe, I wouldn't tell them I have a business specifically that does something very different than my. I mean, now I know it's not that different, but like it took a lot of years for the two for me to come together and just be one with who I am. So I think 2 years is really quick, you know.
What comes up to me when you say imposter syndrome is we're people pleasers and we're perfectionists. So we got to perfect the pleasing of people through this in a way.
Yeah, and then the next thing is it's not about pleasing people; it's about holding space or share or whatever it is. Then I have to be perfect at that. And then when I don't have to be perfect at that, it's like the perfectionism keeps finding hooks on the judgment that I need to be perfect somehow.
Yeah.
It's just a thing that my brain is wired to do, and it's actually pushing me a lot.
Yeah.
It's really, really pushing me forward on being better and doing better. However, it's like it can also really knock me down.
The belief is not there.
Yeah.
I am actually better. I'm actually okay.
Yeah.
Just to where I am. Yes, I can learn more. There's more to learn. And that's the beauty of it. There's a lot more and things are coming up. But there's also that place of believing that where I am right now, it is okay. I'm where I'm supposed to be.
So then you took some trainings, right? You took
Different
you
training.
started with Tony Robbins, and then at some point you did the somatic.
So I started Tony Robbins. I started with Breathwork, and then I met in Breathwork this nice lady that gave me an argument that in workshops it's very aggressive.
Which workshops? Breathwork?
No, the workshop that we went through, the Journey to Home, which had like aggression to that. It was just a lot of push and shove, physical things too, and yelling and the different things. And she gave me an argument. You can also heal trauma by being gentle. And I was like, huh? What are you talking about?
Like, there's nothing about trauma that's gentle.
Yeah.
Even healing.
Yeah, and
You know what you're referring to when you say those workshops? It's psychodrama. So psychodrama will allow the trauma to express itself in the fullest. So it's gonna be loud. It can be whatever it'll be. There's like no real. The approach is to let it be. And if trauma is violent, then the healing is gonna be violent. And so you really like that. Like it could be loving and kind.
I love that because and it took me after she gave me that argument, I didn't stop thinking about it for a few days because it really bothered me. And then I realized my life came from that place of push and shove. You fight to live. You got to be strong about it. Push. And I did not know what gentle actually even means.
Mm.
What is it, being gentle? And she introduced me to the idea of somatic, which I looked into it and decided to study it. It's the healing of trauma program. It was a 9-month course. I'm doing now a second year with them. And it's amazing how you can be actually gentle and be nice. And
Can you share how that works?
Yes. Well, the word somatic actually means body. So it's body work. So anything can be used, and it's being used today overly, the word, when it comes to that. It can be a massage therapist and be somatic about it. Because it's a Greek word for body. But for me, the way I see it, it's working with the body and the mind together. In survival, we're living in our heads, in our mind, which is a very good place to live when you need to survive. It's the best place to be. It keeps me alive. We need that. It's not a bad place. I'm saying that it's not a bad place because a lot of people I find fighting with their past, trying to forget it. Don't do it. Make peace with it. It's part of who I am. My story is part of who I am. My past is part of me. Doesn't mean I need to live there anymore today because it's part of the past. So the idea is to connect to the body too, having the body work, react, to feel, allowing the feeling to come into it. Yes, it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to cry. And it's also okay to feel joy and happiness. And it's okay to be scared. And allowing the body actually feel it.
And that's the gentleness, the allowing, rather than shoving something to change it.
Yes, shoving or rather forcing someone to breathe, which some people do. I don't do that. Like, if you don't want to breathe, it's your choice. It's being gentle about it. It's taking all those same steps, just being gentle about it. And actually, the gentleness, it's a whole new language, which I noticed sticks around a lot longer. Because when it's tough, 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 I know tough. I can go back to it. So I can go back to my old self. Because everything's tough all the time. And it's exhausting, too. I can't be up and hyped and jumping out of bed every morning, feeling excited and I'm amazing and energized, right? I have days where I'm not like that. I'm down. Or whatever it is, it's a heavy day, and I'm being gentle about that and saying, hey, it's okay. I am okay. I'm taking care of myself. And I notice of a lot of people, men especially, they're very rough with their hands. Very rough. They just give you stuff. And actually be nice. What if you can be nice to yourself? Just like to a baby, be nice. When the breath comes in, what I notice of the breath is, with breath work, it helps to connect to the body a little more. I won't say it's the only way to do it. I do notice that it's a very powerful way when someone actually allows themselves to trust themselves and to trust their own breath.
So it deepens their relationship with their body through breath work. And is there a particular breath work method that you use? Like, there's so many. I know I'm enrolled in some of those methods. Like, is it long inhale, exhale from your mouth, from nose? Is it box breathing? Like, is there any particular structure that you follow when you access breath?
So I go with the circular breath, which can be known in many different ways. What different that I do is it's a little more relaxing. It's not forcefully. It's I'm breathing. I'm allowed to breathe. I give myself permission to breathe. I can relax in my breath. I can be gentle with my breath.
And do people, in breath work, there are people who have psychedelic like experiences where it's either visions or deep outer body experiences or deep in the body, but psychedelic like. And does that happen with gentle breathing as well? Like without the like in your work?
Right. So it doesn't happen as often. Like, it might happen. It's not where I aim to. It's not about getting high. The psychedelic effect, what happened is there's a lot of blood flow going to the brain and surrounding the brain, putting pressure on the brain. So the brain thinks it's dying. So actually, if the brain, to protect itself, it goes into the psychedelic effects.
Huh.
And that happens in high fever too.
For some people. I have a friend that like trips, like, I don't know, like he sees people and things when he has high fever.
Yeah, I had that too. But it was very trippy. It was very weird. And
So you're saying that the breath work will put pressure on the brain, which then the brain starts hallucinating in order to survive the death-like experience. Never heard this before. It's so interesting.
That's science. When it comes to that.
So actually, to be scared during breath work is a good thing if someone wants visions and psychedelic-like experiences.
So for people that are looking for breath work, they're looking to get high on breath work. They have that psychedelic things. They do tend to get disappointed when they come to me because it's not the aim and not the goal, and it doesn't always happen. I don't do this. It's a quicker breath. So over oxidized. It's a holotropic breath when it comes to that. Right. So
and people do that for a full like half hour. They just breathe.
Full hour.
Full hour of in and out breathing.
And then I'll breathe.
And do you stop to talk in the middle, or is it just breathing?
Well, I work mostly with private, so yes, there's talking. People need to express, and also there's not a specific method how long it should be. It should be long enough where the stomach and chest come up. But I believe we're all very different as humans, the capacity that we can hold. So it's finding the rhythm of the breath of the person, of my own rhythm, and being comfortable in it. And I think that's important. We find that peace in it, and to trust that. I know you asked me, some people doesn't, breathwork doesn't work for them.
Yeah, some people come out of a group breathwork specifically, where other people scream or purge or cry or have very dramatic experiences, and they're just laying there, and for the full hour they think, this is not working, this is not working, this is not working, I can't let go, you know. So I'm like, what's your thought when people say that, or for viewers that say breathwork doesn't work for me?
Usually they come in with expectations that this is going to happen to me, and then in their mind, this is not going to work. It's not going to work. So they're basically staying in their mind. Yes, it won't work. Then it's because you're not trusting it. It's a part of it is trusting. It's trusting yourself. It's trusting your own breath. It's no one else's breath. It's your own process in healing. It's not my breath. Yes, I'm a breath worker, but I'm not the one breathing, right? It's the person breathing. He's doing his own work through it, and it's about trusting himself. It's trusting about breath. And what's interesting about air, we don't feel it, we don't see it. What we feel is the wind that we can cause through it. We can't see it, we see through it, and we can feel it. It's basically, it's very godliness in it. We can't see, we can hear, we can feel it, right? So it's trusting in nothing in a way, which is actually what keeps us alive too.
Which is actually access to everything.
Actually, a comedian that talks about it, I think he's Christian. He says that as believers, we believe that God is, we can't see him, we can't feel him, right? Basically, it's a nothing, right? And then you have atheists that believe in nothing. They can't see, you can't feel, you can't smell, right? So it's very similar in a way.
It's just a question of trusting the nothing and see where that can take me and what's lying in the nothing. So almost like, when people don't maybe breath or any of these modalities that they feel it doesn't work, the not working is what's the next step. It's like, look, okay, it doesn't work. How's that feel? What does that tell you? What do you need? And then with that, to keep rolling in another breath and following the not working.
Yeah,
I think that's a whole other kind of power, a whole other kind of well-being.
there's also a very powerful thing to do is asking questions, asking myself questions. And there's the Byron Katie when it comes to that, asking questions, is it true? And asking myself, is it true? Is it real? Or anything, just questioning myself. And I've done it. And I got to a point where I thought I was going crazy. I'm losing it because if I'm a Christian, I question every single thing and being in my life, the world, God, every aspect. And I thought I was going mad. So I was reading one of Brené Brown's book. I do not remember which one it was. It was a while ago, which actually grounded me in that and saying, no, it's a good thing. But after what I learned from that is questioning everything. And then I learned that I can choose what I want to believe. It's a choice. So having the questioning the thoughts, we have lots of thoughts. None of them are true. The only one that is true is the one I choose to believe. And it's mine to choose.
Well, it's the one I choose to believe, and Tony Robbins says it's the ones that build my life. It's like I can say I'm good enough. I can say I'm not good enough. I can find evidence for both.
Right.
I can say there are things that I do and done that are not good. There are things that I do and have done that are good. So which one is true? And the answer is the one that creates well-being, love, success. Which belief is actually going to build that love? And that ends up being the truest one for me, which is why people don't necessarily change. Some people don't want to change because sometimes what I judge needs to be changed in them actually brought them a lot of success, financial success specifically. So they don't want to let go of it. So for them, that's their highest truth. And until they don't find the not trueness in it for them, they're not going to let go of it. No matter how many narcissist videos is flooded on the internet.
Right.
They're not going to let go because that belief actually brought them great success. And I know I do that. There are certain beliefs that I have around working out and stuff that I know they're false. And somehow picking this smallness is still giving me in my head more of a win or pleasure or comfort than dropping that belief. So it ends up being about what will give me the greatest return, the greatest success, which which is a kind of for me, to me it's a trip. Like sometimes I know that this belief is not true, and I find myself holding on to it, and I know why. It's because this instant gratification, this moment of comfort, just feels better than the other option, which I know is truer. So I have this dance relationship with what's actually in my control and what not. Like sometimes there's this deeper part of me that holds on to things, even though my conscious mind wants to let go of it so badly.
Right.
And just wait. For me, it's waiting it out another week, another month. Eventually, I'm going to let go. As long as I inspire myself and surround myself with people that agree with this other truth that's more true, which means me being more powerful and more right. There's a check-in group that I run, which I'm there every second week. And so last night wasn't my week on, but I hopped on. It was on Zoom. They usually meet in person and Zoom with me and in person. So last night they chose Zoom for logistical reasons. So I was like, I'm hopping on. I can use a check-in, not to run it, not to lead it, not to do anything. And I hopped on. It was wonderful. And when I hung up, I told my wife, these people are so amazing. And I gave her a few examples, like one guy did so-and-so and the other guy did so-and-so. I didn't tell her who did what, but it was more like examples of why they're so amazing. And I noticed that for me, it's really important to surround myself with people that hold or do things that I want to be doing. And as long as I surround myself with that crowd, with people that I admire that way, I'm going to level up. I'm just going to do that at some point. So that's one of the things that are, it's for me very powerful with a circle. It's like I surround myself with people that hold a certain standard in their life, and maybe I also hold it for them. They look at me, they're like, "Oh, Mati's doing so and so, so I want to do so and so." But it's a shared experience where we both hold each other accountable to well-being or to the highest truth that I can step into. So yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you a few questions before we wrap up. I think we can keep talking for a long time, and I want to wrap up. I want to ask you a few questions before. What's surprising you in your coaching work and therapeutic work? What do you think would be harder and it's actually easier than you thought? And what is a challenge that you face?
That's a good question. My challenge right now is the driving part, which is I find exhausting. I do love the sessions. I think it's a blessing to have the ADHD in that because I get hyper focus, which I love that. And the hard part is probably being exhausted after that.
What's surprisingly easier than you thought in your work?
It's easy to change a person's perspective. For example, I had someone that they told me I'm broken, right? So I asked them, prove it. Where you're broken? They were broken hand. What's broken? Right? And they're like, what? and as I explained, saying that I'm broken, it's a thought that I'm broken. There's no reality that says that I'm broken. I have a society that says, oh yeah, if you go through mental health and you have problems and you have this, it means you're broken. No. You're part of God. God is not broken. If you're broken, God is broken. Those two don't work together.
So if it's a broken God, it might not be God.
Exactly.
You know, I don't remember which tzaddik told the atheist that the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either.
Yeah.
So that's the surprising piece of like sometimes how easy it is to change a mindset.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What is a myth about breathwork that you think people think and it's not necessarily true?
That is it. The breathwork is all. It's all you need. If you're an asshole before breathwork, you're an asshole after that too. If you don't change behavior and having boundaries and add in all those things, it will not change. Your marriage will not change. You might be a little calmer by doing breathwork. You have more awareness about yourself, but you also have to put a lot of tools in it too.
What's a myth you think about healing that's maybe different, or another myth that you think about the healing community or the healing work that you find?
A myth I find about healing is I have to do it for life, nonstop. I see healing as a construction. I'm building a house. I build a foundation. I build the first floor, the second floor, if I want a third floor, a porch, a yard, whatever. And there's also a time where I'm supposed to hang the pictures up and put in furniture and sit down in them and actually enjoy what I have. It's not about just remodeling nonstop.
And what's a closing statement you want to end with? Maybe a blessing or a vision or just a message you want to leave our viewers with?
I think a breath that anyone can do. I enjoy, that I find it very relaxing, and you can do it before bed.
Go ahead, guide me. Tell me.
It's through the nose, in through the nose and out through the nose, so fully in. And by the way, before we start that, if the nose is a little clogged because we have all the mucus, what you can do is take out the air, close your nose with your hand, and go. And notice the breath opens up. We released a lot of the mucus that's stuck in the nose.
Hmm.
Actually breathe. So the breath will be in through the nose, fully in, and fully out through the nose. The exhale will feel be with a hum. So, mm, mm, you want to have this vibration. So there's nice scientifically facts about that too. There's a chemical, a gas that gets built up and goes into the lungs and cleans the lungs. Another thing that this breath does, we have the vagus nerve, that it's a nerve that goes down both sides, all the way down the spine, and it actually connects with our heart, the mind, the heart, the stomach. And that's what happens with a lot of people with trauma, that gets shaking. So that actually helps with that, to relax them. And I've done it with someone for over an hour and 20 minutes. And I've never seen a calmer person after that. You don't have to do it for that long. You can do it for 10 minutes. You can do it before sleep. I have clients, they stop taking melatonin. They do that, they relax and fall asleep into it. It might annoy their
Wow.
wife, or it might annoy
Wow.
the husband a little bit, the part. But it's
Yeah, a lot of the healing stuff is weird. So acknowledged, and still, if they're good practices, find a way to do it. So
and have fun in the weirdness of it. It's
yeah,
weird.
thank you. And I honor your story. I'm actually quite fascinated by your journey, your ability to get up, your ability to seek truth. You said something earlier about like you don't know how to do things that are not fully true, which is probably why you didn't settle for mediocre survival ways of living. You kept seeking and searching and finding something that's truer. I honor every bit of your journey that you shared and what you didn't share and whatever you're still dealing with and doing in your life to stand up and be an anchor and a pillar for. I hear from many, like besides the way I know you, it's like what I hear from others, your ability to provide safety, your ability to show up as a leader and as a support, as a friend, and just to be someone that can walk around with the story that you walk around with and actually break that glass and then go build and make this what's possible to make it yours. So I honor you. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing. I didn't know how this came about. I only knew bits because it was never shared with me. You never shared me as a story. It's like as a book. I think it's definitely book worthy, which we can talk about soon. I have some ideas for you, but it's definitely a story, and I admire you looking at it as a story and honoring your past as a story and the power that storytelling has. I appreciate your trust throughout the years and your friendship, and you being a guest in my house and the laughs that you've shared. And I wish you a ton of blessings and success, and you should just keep doing and growing and inspiring and being the safe person that you are, and yeah, a lot of blessing and success to you. And
Thank
I'm gonna share your contact info if anyone watching this wants to connect with you and follow what you put out or offerings that you have. And thank you very much.